Well, thank you all for coming tonight. Welcome to our presentation of Getting to Know the Great Lakes. I'm Leah Holloway. I'm the program manager with Milwaukee Riverkeeper, and we are a member of the plastic-free MKE movement to reduce single-use plastic throughout Milwaukee. We'll get started here in just a second. Everyone's muted now. But feel free to add questions and comments into the chat throughout. Like I just said, I'll bring those to Liz's attention and we can talk about them. And then at the end of her presentation, we'll also have an opportunity to have a little discussion and unmute yourselves and have like a little Q&A at the end as well. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce you all tonight to my dear friend, Liz Sutton. Liz is the outreach manager for the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee's School of Freshwater Sciences, also known as SFS. So we'll probably use that acronym a lot today. Liz offers tours of the school and the research labs at SFS, but also tries to bring the school out into the community because it's not easy for everyone to get to and to go through. And she leads hands-on educational programs for middle and high school students that give young people an opportunity to be water scientists for the day. I've been a part of those. They're really fun and engaging, and everyone gets their hands and feet wet and has a really good time. Additionally, Liz manages two really amazing annual competition programs for middle and high school students. One of which is an ROV competition, a remotely operated vehicle competition in which the students actually build fully functional little underwater robots. And that is a key component of water research. And so that's a really great experience for these kids to get at a young age. And then the second competition is actually in 2 weeks. So we are lucky that Liz was able to find time for us this evening. She has been swamped getting ready for that. And that is the Lake Sturgeon Bowl. And that is the local arm of the National Ocean Sciences Bowl, which is like a quiz bowl for high school students, but it's all focused on the oceans and the Great Lakes. Oops, I accidentally just muted Liz. Sorry, Liz, I was trying to click on something else. So the Lake Sturgeon Bowl, Liz has been coordinating teams of high school students all year long. And in 2 weeks, what they're going to do is compete against each other. And the team that wins in 2 weeks gets to go on to compete with students from around the country. And it is a really big deal. And it's really, really impressive. So if you've never heard of the Lake Sturgeon Bowl, I encourage you to look into it a little bit more. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Liz. And she's going to tell us a little bit more about these amazing bodies of water that we have right in our own backyards.
Well, thank you, Leah. Wow, what a great introduction. Leah and I have known each other for quite a while. She is an alumni of the School of Freshwater Sciences. And we started working together when she was a student here and have just enjoyed continuing our friendship and our work together. So I appreciate that you've asked me to be here today. We're going to start, we're going to focus on getting to know the Great Lakes. But first, I did want to give you just a little background on the school. Not everyone is familiar. So we are the School of Freshwater Sciences, and we're located here in the Milwaukee Harbor at the Great Lakes Research Facility. And we are an oceanographic style research institute, but we're located on the Great Lakes. And that really means we are located right on the water. If you see here, we're the long building kind of to the bottom right, and that's Lake Michigan. We're right there. So we are the only school dedicated to freshwater in North America, and we are the largest academic water research institute in the Great Lakes. So there are lots of other schools that do parts of it and that type of thing, and lots of other research institutes, but we're the largest. And our research is really what we are founded on. In the 1960s, we started doing research on the Great Lakes and large fresh bodies of water around the world. And that can be anything from a lot of traditional things you might think of with freshwater system dynamics. So how are the lakes moving and going through, and a lot of the things I'll talk about today. But it can also mean aquaculture, where we are working on the best ways to raise different fish populations and how we can help maintain them or grow them for commercial use. We are looking at wastewater outflows and what's going back into the lake after it goes through the urban water cycle, drinking water, pharmaceuticals. I mean, really, it's a wide range of things that we talk about, anything having to do with fresh water. But since 2009, we have added the School of Freshwater Sciences, and we are now working on training the next generation of water scientists and leaders. This has traditionally been a graduate school since 2009. However, this fall in 2021, we will welcome our first class of undergraduate students, which we are really excited about, to be able to expand to the undergraduate students, because so many of them have decided to go elsewhere and then we kind of bring them back. So we're excited to get them through their whole career path. So this is now, a much bigger focus, but they are all really actively engaged in the research that we are doing. So we look at the future of freshwater is here in our building. And, one of the founding people of the school, he actually has been doing work on the Great Lakes for the last 40 years. He was trained as an oceanographer, but grew up in the Great Lakes and decided to return here for much of his career. And that is our Dean, Val Klump. His real focus, and what I like to think about as well, the Great Lakes really are, especially for those of us in Milwaukee, the key to our health, our wealth, and our way of life. So we drink the water, we get a lot of our economics are tied to, or our economic system here is all tied to the water, and we all love to go to the beach or be out on the lake or even just walk and fish along the river. So, this is really an important part of who we are. So Wisconsin is really fortunate just in general. We are actually on 3 different sides. We have water. We have the Mississippi River along the western coast. We have Lake Superior, and then of course we have Lake Michigan. We have 820 miles of coastline with more than 15,000 inland lakes and 32,000 miles of rivers and streams. So on the surface of Wisconsin, we are 15% water, which is huge. And that's not even including the huge aquifer systems that we have below. So we are really fortunate in a lot of ways. Of course, there are always challenges, but in Wisconsin, we're pretty fortunate to have all of those different things. Much less that we're on the Great Lakes. And the Great Lakes have nearly 20% of the world's surface fresh water. So this is a huge economic driver for the United States. It's a huge resource. So we're really fortunate to live here. I wanted to give just a little background. I know some of you may already have some of this information, but it'll help us as we kind of continue forward. So one of the words we're going to use a lot is watershed and basin, or a drainage basin. Basically, if you think of a bowl and the sides of the bowl are the edges of the watershed, any water that falls within the bowl is going to go down to the bottom. If it falls outside of the bowl, it's going to go somewhere else. So looking at a watershed, everything in the bowl is considered the watershed. So for the United States, everything west of the Great Divide, the Continental Divide, is all a part of the Pacific Ocean watershed. Everything on this side is the Atlantic Ocean watershed. And you can see here closer by us, and we'll get kind of drill in a little, but This whole huge area is the Mississippi and Missouri River watershed or drainage basin. And up here, all of the orange area is the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence River.
Hey Liz, can we pause really quickly? I had a couple
Yep.
of questions pop into the chat.
Absolutely.
So this is a good one. With the introduction of undergrad classes, are you allowing people to audit classes?
I do not totally know that answer yet. There is certainly a process at the UW system where people can audit. They are, there's different ones depending on the thing, but I know at times we have had people do that. The other thing you can do is you can send me an email, and my email will be a little later if it hasn't been shared elsewise. And that email, I can add you to our email list where just like today we had a webinar and a speaker who talked from MMSD, and he talked about a lot of the work that they're doing. Last week we had Dan Egan, who wrote the book Death and Life of the Great Lakes. He was a speaker. So even if you don't get a chance to audit, there are ways that you can still find out about the stuff that we're doing. So I'd encourage you to just, like I said, you can send me an email and say, hey, add me to the mailing list, and then I will connect you with a whole bunch.
Yeah, those colloquiums are really fantastic presentations. So yeah, if you get a chance, definitely do those. The second question here is where are the other freshwater areas? And I'm guessing, is that in reference to like other freshwater areas that SFS does research in?
Well, we do research, have done research in a number of other areas. We've done research in Yellowstone, so there's freshwater there. There are definitely, I mean, if you're looking at where's the rest of the freshwater, you know, if we have 20%, throughout the whole like central part of the United States, any lake like any of the lakes and rivers, the Mississippi River, any of those are also freshwater. We do work, if we're looking focused on us, we do work in Yellowstone at times, like Bacalar in Mexico. One of our researchers has done, is actively doing research in Africa on Lake Malawi, one of the large freshwater lakes there. They've been to Antarctica to do some work. But the largest freshwater lake, the one with the most volume in the world, is Lake Baikal, which is in Russia. And we've done work there as well. It is a really, really deep, deep, deep lake. And it's really interesting if you want to learn, I mean, you know, if you want to dig in a little, the difference in diversity of species from that lake, which is really old, hundreds of thousands of years old, as opposed to the Great Lakes, which are only 10 to 15,000 years old. So yeah, there's lots of fresh water around. It just kind of depends on, on where you're looking.
Awesome, thank you. Those are the two questions we had so far.
All right. So drilling down now, we're not the whole United States. So we're looking at the state of Wisconsin. And up here in light blue, when I move my cursor just to check, Leah, can you see? Okay.
Yep.
Up here in light blue, you have Lake Superior. And then everything from this dark line over goes to Lake Michigan. So most of the state of Wisconsin all goes to the Mississippi River drainage basin. So they are part of the Mississippi River watershed. Then you can see there are smaller areas, right? This is part of the lower Wisconsin River. That eventually gets to the Mississippi. You know, all of these different areas will go to the larger area, but We're going to drill down a little bit farther for those of us here in Milwaukee to get a chance to see the Milwaukee kind of centric one. And here is the subcontinental divide. And that is basically what separates, if you're on this side, it's Lake Michigan. If you're on this side, it's the Mississippi River. And if you notice here, this is not very far before you're in that other watershed. And this is where, you know, a lot of issues come up or can come up. But if you are driving on 94 west towards Brookfield, you will go up a large hill. That's the subcontinental divide. So anything that falls west of that, Mississippi, east of it, Lake Michigan. And here you can see this is, you know, these three rivers, the Milwaukee River, the Menominee River, and the Kinnickinnick River are really what made Milwaukee the largest city in the state of Wisconsin. Those three rivers coming together have traditionally for thousands of years been the meeting place for people to connect and send stuff out to the Great Lakes and the rest of the world. So that just kind of, I just want to give a little, you know, kind of drill down into that a little bit. And then here again is the whole Great Lakes drainage basin. And of course, this is what we're going to be talking about more today. We're going to be looking at some of the ways that the basin, the waters move throughout the basin, and how does that affect a variety of things. But yeah, you can look here along Milwaukee and way in Chicago. It is not very far. And even Chicago traditionally would not be really part of Lake Michigan until, except for they switched the direction of the Chicago River a long time ago. So talking about changing the flow of something, these would be pretty hard to change, but this is a really good, I just wanted to give kind of a general idea of how does the water flow through the Great Lakes. So all of it starts in Lake Superior. And I have a chart later, and it's about in 600 feet above sea level. And it makes its whole path down to sea level. So when the water leaves Lake Superior, it goes into Lake Huron and dumps as well into Lake Michigan. Lake Michigan and Lake Huron geologically are the same lake. So they're two lobes of the same lake. And that's really because they are on the same level and the way that they are connected. So water will come down from Lake Superior into Lake Huron, will come kind of rotate through Lake Michigan and go back out. Then from Lake Huron through the St. Clair and Detroit River into Lake Erie. Then it has a really big jump down across Niagara Falls into Lake Ontario before going to St. Lawrence Seaway. So this path is really going to be important as we talk about our next things coming up here. But before that, we're going to do a little trivia. So you're not going to have to shout out your answer or anything. I just want you to think your answer in your head, and then I'll show you what they are. So I'll give you a second once we look at them. So of the Great Lakes, which lake has the largest surface area? Which one do you think? Lake Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, or Ontario? All right, so we're going to start with the smallest surface area. That's Ontario. It is only 7,000 square miles. Erie gets a little bigger. Oh, Lake Michigan is third Then we have Huron and Lake Superior. Lake Superior is a giant lake. It is, what did I say? It is surface area wise, because remember I said Lake Baikal is really deep and had a lot of volume. Surface area wise is the largest freshwater lake in the world. And a lot of times because they are so huge, we really look at them here at the School of Freshwater Sciences as inland seas. Many of our researchers are trained as oceanographers and have much more of a marine background, which is all like saltwater focused, because a lot of the way the water flows in the Great Lakes is much more similar to the oceans than it would be to something like Lake Winnebago. Okay, so which one has the largest volume? And we are talking about the 5 Great Lakes, so Lake Baikal won't count. All right. Lake Erie is the smallest. Then we have Ontario, Lake Huron, Lake Michigan, and then Lake Superior. Lake Superior, yes, it has the largest surface area and the largest volume of water. In fact, you could take all of the water from the other 4 Great Lakes and dump it into Lake Superior, and you still would not fill it up. So on its own, Lake Superior has 10% of the world's fresh water, which I always think is pretty crazy. All right, which one is the deepest? I've kind of given some of it away, I know, but it's still fun anyhow. And it's going to be important when we talk about it a little later. So Lake Erie is only at the deepest, very deepest point. It is only 210 feet deep. And on average, it's 62 feet deep. Lake Huron, and this is kind of, look at the difference between like the very smallest and the next one up. It's really, Lake Erie is a really big difference there. Then we have Ontario. Lake Michigan is the second. It is 925 feet deep, which is really deep. And then Lake Superior. So Lake Superior, I mean, many of these, the average depth is actually deeper than the deepest point of Lake Erie. And Lake Superior, you could fit the Empire State Building straight up and down in Lake Superior, and you still would need 75 more feet to cover it.
Liz, do you know off the top of your head how deep Lake Baikal is?
I do not. I should have thought you were going to.
I'm going to look it up because it's.
Thank you, Leah.
It's
while
very,
I'm talking.
very, yeah.
Yeah, it's oh, I didn't put I have a slide of the difference in depth between Lake Baikal and the Great Lakes. But I didn't include it in this one.
Okay, I got it. Are you guys ready?
Yeah, of course.
5,387 feet.
Yeah.
It's like 4 times deeper than Lake Superior. That's intense.
And it is a really, if you ever, when you have a chance, go look on, even Google Maps or Google Earth or anything, of a picture of the surface of Lake Baikal. It is this skinny little like sliver of a lake, but it's so deep. So thank you for looking that up.
Yeah, for sure. That was fun.
All right. So which lake has the longest shoreline? Ontario is 712 miles. Then we have Erie, a little bit bigger. Lake Michigan is about twice as big, or has twice as long of a shoreline. Oh, Lake Superior second. with 2,700 miles, and Lake Huron has almost another 1,000 more miles. Now, this is somewhat of a trick question, I will say, because if you really look at shoreline, it is not just the outside edge of a lake. It includes all of the various islands within the lake. And Lake Huron has many, many islands and all of the Georgian Bay that contributes to its shoreline. So that distance around Lake Huron and all those islands is the same as the distance between Milwaukee and Lima, Peru. Had to find a fun fact. All right, so which lake has the largest population? Now you have to think a little bit. Think about what's going on. They're not just here in the United States. All of the Great Lakes share a northern border with Canada, except for, of course, Lake Michigan, which is all in the United States. But all the rest share a border with Canada. So think a little about where those Canadian cities are as well. So the one with the smallest population is Lake Superior. While there is a lot of Lake Superior to be had, it is population-wise, there are not a lot of people around there, especially on the Canadian side. So you can see the difference between Lake Superior and then once we bump to Lake Huron. Quite a bit of difference. Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, and then Lake Michigan. When you look at Lake Michigan and all of you're considering, Chicago and all the way up through Milwaukee and Green Bay and all of those areas, Lake Michigan has the largest population. And I couldn't find a fun fact about the number 12 million something. So I just wanted to point out that there are 275,000 acres of sand dunes that line the coast of Lake Michigan. On the Wisconsin side here where we are, there are fewer. There Kohler Andre, if you ever get a chance to see it, that's a wonderful area. And there are certainly other ones, but the Michigan side of Lake Michigan really has a lot of wonderful dune areas. All right, so this one needs a little bit of information. We're looking at which Great Lake has the longest retention time. And retention time basically means the average amount of time that a drop of water spends in the lake. So it's really a mathematical calculation of about how much rain falls every year, how much flows out to the next lake, all of those things. So it is a mathematical calculation, but it's a really important thing to learning about the Great Lakes and why some of the things are happening in the Great Lakes. So which lake has the longest retention time? Lake Erie is 2.6 years. And I'm going to pause for a second. Some of you who might be slightly older may remember a time when the Cuyahoga River was on fire and Lake Erie was literally on fire. Part of why they were able to turn that around pretty quickly is because water stays in there for a fairly short amount of time. If you remember, Lake Erie was really pretty shallow. So the water moves through there quickly and heads off over Niagara Falls. So that means things can go from bad to good pretty quickly, but it could also go from good to bad pretty quickly. So it has a big role in what happens. Lake Ontario, 6 years. Huron's 22. Lake Michigan is 99 years. And when you think about that, things that happened in the 1930s, we are still dealing with in our water. So retention time plays a big role. Lake Superior is 191 years, you know, it being so big and deep and its location kind of in the system. So this is part of what we're going to be, you know, really getting into. But it takes an average of 204 years for water to travel from Lake Superior all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. So think about how it kind of moves through there. And this is the chart that I mentioned before. When you are looking at this, so this is Lake Superior where it starts. This is actually Duluth. It goes through the locks at Sault Ste. Marie. And these two are together because remember, like I said, they are two lobes of the same lake geologically. So they are both very different in a lot of ways, but in this case, they're together. And then we have, you know, St. Clair and Lake St. Clair and the Detroit River before we go to Lake Erie. And then we have this large drop off, which is Niagara Falls, just 243 feet to Lake Ontario. And then we need to start, you know, kind of making these smaller shifts down to the St. Lawrence River and the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and then the Atlantic Ocean. So this whole path and the distance traveled and all of those things are really, that's an important part of understanding how the system works.
All right, I got one more, a really good comment. I want to jump into this.
Absolutely.
Two, because I sort of answered one, but I don't want to cut you off with the opportunity to like expound on my answer. But the question is, why do we have fewer sand dunes on our side? Is it because of the water movement moving west to east? And I basically said yes, like it's water and wind, right, that are moving west to east. So that pushes all of the sand and causes more erosion on that side, right? So the sand dunes can build up over there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Cool. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything else that I missed in my really short one-word answer.
No, sorry, it was a very good answer. I don't really have anything to add to it.
All right, and then the other comment in here, which I think is really interesting, it says, so as the most populous lake, the health of Lake Michigan is the most important. And then also, why is Lake Superior more, does that say stony? It's supposed to be stormy, perhaps?
Okay.
So yeah, those are the next two questions that popped in there.
Well, and the question about Lake Superior, we're going to kind of be covering for a little bit here. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to be really going into that. Lake Superior, well, if it's stormy, and that's the case that we're trying to look at, it's part of the size of it. You know, if you look at just comparison between like Lake Winnebago when it's really windy and waves are crashing, you're still not getting the size of the waves that you would get in like Lake Superior because there's just so much more water that's available to move around. And especially over where, for those of you who remember like the Edmund Fitzgerald and those types of things, there's a lot of really interesting rock formations that are part of the geology of the bottom of Lake Superior that cause a lot of issues. I mean, that's part of why up in Door County, where Death's Door is what they call that area, is because of the variety of rocks and different things that originally they had trouble with. So storm wise, it's really a matter of the amount of water and the space it has to move. And there'd probably be some with like the wind and sometimes they're at that break point of where the cold wind's coming down, but there's also some Gulf Stream coming in. So that would play into it as well.
Yeah, I did clarify it was stony and I totally misunderstood. So,
Okay,
but I
that's all right.
also answered the
That's
stony question too, right? Like the geology of like.
I was. So, well, I was also going to say the stony question. Really, it is very interesting. Yes, the geology, it depends on the makeup of the stone itself. Um, but it's also even along Lake Michigan here, if you go from here, if even within Milwaukee, if you start at Grant Park Beach, where the actual beach is and people are swimming and all that stuff, that's a little bit of a manicured beach just so people have space to swim. If you go up the shore a little bit north, it becomes more rocky. There are lots of wonderful fossils you can find if you like to look for those kinds of things. The sand is a little different. It has a magnetic element in it, so you can kind of play with magnets with it. And as you kind of work your coast up, it totally changes. I was recently up in the Two Rivers area, and you can go from one coast, or one part of the beach which is very sandy, um, or covered with mussels, which is a whole different topic. Um, or you can go 2 miles up the road and it will be a very rocky beach. So there are a lot of things that play with that, the reefs and a whole variety of things. So the Lake Michigan and Lake Superior are very dynamic. And so depending on what's going on, the beach area might be very different.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. So I'm not going to talk a lot about how plastic is getting into the lake and those types of things. Because I feel like you have some idea since you guys are part of Plastic Free MKE. And we have talked, we may do some other webinars and stuff if we have interest in that. But we want to look a little bit about the effects it is having on the Great Lakes. And there are 2 million pounds of plastic that enter the Great Lakes every year. Half of that is in Lake Michigan. And we look a lot at what types of things are coming up. And the plastic, when it gets into Lake Michigan and a lot of the Great Lakes, it kind of bounces around a little more, almost like a washing machine that kind of tumbles it around. So it breaks it down into little microplastics. And that microplastic is found in a really wide variety of areas in the Great Lakes and throughout the Great Lakes. And the way it gets broke down is very different from what happens in the ocean. So in the ocean, there are actually 5, unfortunately, large garbage patches that are mainly plastic based in the oceans. So there's a really large one here between, like California and Japan area. But there are these other ones, and the patches can form a little easier in the oceans because they are getting plastics from around the world, everywhere. If there's plastic, even if there's plastic that gets in the Great Lakes, if it works its way to the Atlantic Ocean, it can become part of one of these. So it's really hard to determine where an individual piece of plastic came from unless it is very descriptive and still has part of it that shows it was, from the US or from China or wherever. So in the Great Lakes, you have these, although they're really large systems, they're also somewhat contained. So if plastic gets dropped into Lake Michigan, it bounces around here. Remember, I said that the retention time was 99 years. So things get bounced around, and that doesn't include if it gets kind of dug into the sentiment and the sediment. So it really gets kind of bounced around, and the more it gets bounced around, it just gets finer and finer and finer. And if you look here, like I said, more than half of the plastic in the Great Lakes is in Lake Michigan. So why is that? Well, here's kind of a chart of all of our trivia things, and this is really the reason why I was pointing that out. So when you look at Lake Michigan, we have a pretty big surface area. We're really pretty deep. We have a lot of water there. And we have the largest population. So wherever there's more population, that's going to increase it. There are just more people where, even if they're not intentionally doing it, more people means more plastic in the area. So Lake Superior, I suppose I can go back here. Lake Superior has much, much less because they have fewer people living there. They also are the top, they're kind of the start of the whole system on the way to the Atlantic Ocean. So, they're not getting extra plastic from other areas. But it's good that it's not there. It'd be good if it wasn't anywhere. But because remember that retention rate is so long for Lake Superior, anything that gets there is there for a really long time. So with Lake Michigan, we have such a large population and it is around for a really long time. Like I said, we're dealing with things that people put in the 1930s. So even though we may know better on a lot of different things, we still have those things that we're dealing with. And so this all is really key to understanding how the lakes move and how plastic is going to move within that system. And that's why, like I pointed out earlier with Lake Erie, even though it's going to gather any materials from Lake Superior or Lake Michigan or Lake Huron, and has a really large number of people, stuff can move through there pretty quickly. And so all of that plays a huge role in each one of these lakes. That's why these things are really changing. And I wanted to show, I'm going to actually, this is a screenshot of this, but I'm actually going to share another one which shows the current, like right now, currents that are happening at the Great Lakes. So this is provided by NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They do a lot of work in the Great Lakes on a whole variety of things. But I wanted to show this because now we're looking at, we have a lot of plastic. We have a lot of people living around our lake. Let's look at how the currents are moving. So here, this is probably pretty windy up here in Lake Superior, like we were talking about before. And here you would see maybe some plastics moving around, but they're kind of working their way down. Look at what happens down here by all of the people who live around Lake Michigan. Although we sometimes have these other ones, Erie and stuff's moving, Rochester's getting, or Lake Ontario's getting some really weird winds. But generally, water has to come through here and it swirls around here before it moves back up. So the currents play a really big role in how plastic moves through our system. And the waves in themselves, it's always really interesting when we get someone who here at the school who's used to being on ocean vessels and research vessels that are working in the ocean. They feel like they'll have no problem when they get out on Lake Michigan in our research vessel. And they tend to be the ones who get seasick, because in the ocean, it's such a large body of water. Think about, if you have a bathtub and you drop something in it, the waves kind of move out and they kind of move really slow like this. If you drop something in a bowl that's kind of shallow, like the Great Lakes, with a little less water, those waves now start crashing into the sides and then coming in and meeting in the middle, and they're kind of all over the place. Well, that's what breaks all that plastic down into microplastics. And so we are seeing those microplastics all over the place. As that other slide showed, those microplastics are found in a lot of places, including drinking water. 30 million.
Sorry,
Yep.
can I interrupt one more time? Because this is
Absolutely.
a timely question. The question is, are most microplastics largely created in the Great Lakes as a result of being broken down over time due to the retention time and all the things you're talking about? Or are most microplastics in the Great Lakes entering as a microplastic to begin with, which would be, like those little microfibers from our laundry and stuff like that? Do people know yet? Has that research been done?
I don't know the exact research on it. I couldn't say, oh, this much percentage or anything like that. But both things are happening. There's definitely microfibers and plastics coming off of our clothes and sunscreen, and different things. There is a federal ban on micro beads, which is good because that used to be in lotions and shampoos and different things. So it is coming in that way, but it is also very much coming in the form of plastic that we are throwing away, or it's getting into the system in one way or another. And as it gets broken down, it just gets that smaller and smaller and harder to see. But in the Great Lakes, that's one of the other big things. In the ocean, I said it could come from anywhere. In the Great Lakes, it is coming from people who are in the Great Lakes. It's not coming from Colorado or Japan or anywhere else. It is coming from the people who are in and are visiting the Great Lakes, who are living here and visiting it. And, it is a big responsibility. 30 million people get their drinking water from the Great Lakes. I'm where I am here at my home, pretty much everywhere I generally go. I'm drinking water from Lake Michigan. That's where the majority of us in the Milwaukee area get our water. And our bodies are 70 to 80% water. So that means, and I look at it as I am myself in 70 to 80% Lake Michigan. So if that is the case, that's it's a pretty good cry for what are some of the things we can try to do. Because as someone was asking before, if we have so many people there and they are using that water, and there are a lot of people who are using all of the Great Lakes water to drink, but it is definitely something to take in consideration, and one of the big differences from what happens in the ocean, because we can't drink that water, at least not without lots of other things. So I can continue talking, but now I'm kind of Leah knows me, that's why you can see her giggling. I can talk forever about things. But I do want to answer some more questions. Just kind of put it out there because because we've been answering questions, I've talked a little longer than what we originally planned, but this is my contact information. Feel free to reach out. And otherwise we can answer some questions. And I don't mind, Leah, if you want to, moderate and people like raise their hand or something and just ask a question. I'm cool with whatever. I will leave this up for a moment longer and then I'm going to stop sharing so I can actually see people, if that's all right.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much, Liz. This was fascinating. I think even I learned stuff, and I have a master's degree in freshwater sciences. So this is good. There's always more to learn. Yeah, and so I do appreciate you taking the questions throughout because I think they were like super timely there. That was awesome. So here's the next question, and this one might be actually, well, it's probably aimed for both of us actually. I think we can both do this one. But what, if any, kind of relationship do you have with the Alliance for the Great Lakes? And you've been talking for a while, so I can start and you can take a drink and then you can answer for you.
Perfect.
Riverkeeper does have a partnership with Alliance for the Great Lakes. We work together. They do beach cleanups and we do river cleanups, things like that. Alliance for the Great Lakes is a member of the Plastic Free MKE Coalition. So they have representatives that attend our meetings and help us kind of strategize and frame the work that the coalition does. So that's really exciting. And yeah, we keep in pretty close contact with them, which is really exciting. So that's us. I don't know, what's your relationship with the Alliance?
Personally, I work some with the education department of the Alliance for the Great Lakes and some of the people locally, some on beach cleanups and those types of things. I do a lot of work. They have some wonderful K-12 curriculum and lesson plans for a variety of groups. And some of the stuff that I do, I use that curriculum and have trained other teachers how to use it. But our researchers are working with them on a very regular basis. So the school itself has a connection with that. And some of our alumni now work there as well.
Fantastic. And then another question, what about nurdles? Are there manufacturers of plastic along the Lake Michigan shoreline?
As far as nurdles, I don't know for sure. Leah, you might almost be able to answer that better. But there are a lot of manufacturers of different plastic things throughout the whole area. So it's pretty hard to not have ones that use some type of plastic.
Yeah, I know we find a ton of nurdles on the beach, in the lake all the time. They're definitely there, and it almost seems like somebody has to be accidentally dumping them into the lake at some point. But whether that's Michigan or they're coming down from Lake Superior, I don't actually know. All right. Oh, good question. Will these slides be available to use with my middle school students? Oh my gosh, this is such a great question. So I don't know about Liz sharing her slides, but we actually working on plastic free. MKE has a whole working group focused on education, and we are this close to launching our website with our plastics education toolkit. So Celine, I'm going to reach out to you and we will share a ton of resources, and I will also connect with Liz and see if she is interested in sharing her resources as well. So we have a lot of really good high quality plastics education stuff that's coming out.
And yes, and I believe I saw that it was Celine. Celine, of course, you can borrow some, have some of it. Just email me. And as you know, I am always willing to come and talk to your middle school classes. So if they are ready to hear a different voice over Zoom than perhaps their teachers, they can reach out to me and I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Very timely. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to drop my contact information into the chat as well. You saw Liz's up on the screen. But if anybody wants to reach out to me directly about plastics education, I can't talk and type at the same time. So I'm actually going to start the next question and then I'll type my in there. Okay. Oh, what is a nurdle? Well, we're talking about nurdles. Nurdles are little balls of plastic that are basically used to create other plastic things. So a plant, a manufacturing plant that makes something out of plastic is going to get boatloads, probably literally boatloads, of these little tiny plastic balls, and they melt them down and turn them into other things. And so if you ever go to the beach and you pick up a handful of sand, like half of it is going to be like little tiny, perfectly formed round balls of plastic, and that's a nurdle. Great. Next question. Have we started seeing microplastics entering aquifers? That is an excellent question. I know a ton of people in the West depend on aquifers for fresh water.
So I don't have a exact one for sure. I don't know if we totally have. If you send me an email, I will ask our geologist for a definite answer. You know, but there are some things, and that's part of why you might see things like bioswales or rain gardens or different things. You know, there are part of the bonus of that is that different sand and clay and different things can filter out things. So I don't know the answer, but I would be very happy to find it out for you.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question because, you know, like a lot of things do get filtered out, but they're finding microfibers and microplastics literally everywhere these days.
Right. So I wouldn't be
Final frontier.
surprised, but I don't know for sure.
That's really interesting. Okay, next question. Are municipal water filtration facilities typically able to remove microplastics?
Not all municipal water filtration systems are the same. There are a number of home, you know, microfiltration things that you can do. But municipal ones, it just kind of depends on their system.
So a good way to think about that is that, you know, the research that's been done, Liz showed a slide at one point that said that 93% of our bottled water and 100% of beer brewed in the Great Lakes region has microplastics in it. And all of those sources use, well, most of them, some of them use springs or aquifers or whatever, but the ones that are, those are using municipal supplies for like brewing their beer and things like that. And plastics are showing up in our beer and our bottled water. So I'd have to say, without any other information other than just that, I would have to say that unfortunately a lot of municipal water filtration systems aren't able to get all of that on either end, right? Like it's not able to be taken out, and all of it's not able to be taken out in the wastewater treatment before those waters are put back into the system. And then also on the intake side of things, they're not able to filter that out as well. So that is very unfortunate. I will say that it is 6:30, so if anyone needs to head out, please feel free to do that. We are recording, and we will send out this recording to everyone who registered, and it will be on our social media stuff. So if you missed the end, you can come back and watch it later. And thank you all for joining us. And then Liz, I know you said you were okay to stick around for a few more minutes. We have like several more. People have awesome questions, so we've got a lot more coming at you.
Not a problem.
All right, so I'm from the Fox Wolf River Basin that drains to Lake Michigan. How can I get involved in plastic outreach efforts even though I'm outside of Milwaukee? Well, I'll just jump in real quickly and say that all of our resources are available to anyone who is interested in them. So if you visit the Plastic Free MKE website, which I'll drop into the chat box, we have a lot of resources just for your own kind of knowledge and information, and feel free to share those with your friends and neighbors. We're also hoping to kind of put together a package of information if you wanted to start your own plastic-free movement in your own community. That's coming down the pipe. Yeah, anyone else have other ideas? Liz, do you have anything to add to that? Otherwise,
the only things I'm thinking, there's a group called the Lake Michigan Stakeholders Group, which connects a whole variety of people. As well as I seem to remember, I get connected to a lot of different water organizations, and I seem to remember that there is a Fox Wolf River organization that is working at, similar to like River Keepers, but just is working on a variety of things. So that might be another source of connection for you.
Yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, like LNRP. Is that the one that you mentioned? I can never remember. Sorry,
No, that was the
Lakeshore National
LNRP is the Lakeshore Natural
Resources Program.
Yeah.
So that's an organization that works all the way up and down the western half of the Lake Michigan shoreline. So they might be a good resource too.
Oh, wait, I just saw someone said they worked for it.
Erin's good. Lakeshore Natural Resource Partnership. Thank you, Erin. Erin dropped the link to that one in the chat for you, and the Fox Wolf River watershed.
And
where else?
Kelly said she works for the Fox Wolf Watershed Alliance.
Oh, fantastic.
So, I think we need to get Kelly connected.
Yeah. Feel free to share your email address if you're comfortable with that, Kelly, or if you wanted to email it to me and I can share it out with people who reach out to me, however you want to do that. But I love this. This is great, making some good connections. Okay, I want to keep going. There's like a lot of questions that are kind of like stuck in the middle of all these other comments here. Are there water filters available to filter out the microplastics in our drinking water? So I think you're referring there to like on our end, right? Like how can we filter out what's coming out of our tap? I don't know if you have any resources there. I know the city of Milwaukee, because of our lead issue, has a really great resource of super high quality filters to use in your home. And they have a list of recommendations of all different styles. If you like the pitcher ones, there's pitchers. If you like the ones that fit on your tap, I have no idea if any of them are rated for plastics, but they take out lead, so.
Erin, being the wonderful person that she is, pointed out or put a link to the city of Milwaukee eco services and program stuff, and they have some information about the drinking water filter program. So she's on top of it because she always is.
That's why I love it when Erin comes to all of our meetings. All the links. Great, good team effort. I'm just going to double check. I feel like the most of the rest of them are like thanks and kudos. So you should be free to take a look at those. Let's see. Thank you, Kelly, for adding in your email. That's really awesome.
And I actually just went back and looked while you were answering. And Kelly did happen to be the one who wanted to make sure that she could connect to other resources in the Fox Wolf area. So
fabulous, fabulous. Okay. So last question that I'm seeing in here, and this was sent directly to me, is are nylon and polyester clothes a source of microfiber when they're washed? If so, what's the percentage they contribute total? I can answer that first part. Yes. Unfortunately, all of our synthetic fibers contribute microfiber plastics to our systems. Yeah, is right. It's not good. There are tools that you can use to help reduce that. There's something called a guppy friend, which is like a little like a bag that you can put your clothes in while they're being washed, and it helps capture those fibers. There are systems, I mean, there's an upfront cost to them, but I think over time, you know, it's an investment, but there's like a system that you attach to your wall and your water goes through there and it filters out the plastics. So there's ways you can help mitigate that in addition to trying to buy more cotton and wool and other natural fibers from here on out. But I know we all have fleeces and yoga pants, all these really comfy things that are made of plastic. Liz, do you have a sense of the percentage of
I don't know the percentage. I mean, I know, I think why people look at it a lot is because it's kind of one of those surprising things, you know. We are all the tech clothes are easy to wear and they, you know, wash easy and all of those things. And so now as we find out more about them, I think that's part of why we all know about them, but I don't know the exact percentage.
Yeah, I'd be very curious to hear it. And I think that goes back to that question about like, is most of the plastic in the Great Lakes coming from microfibers already, or are they breaking down from like plastic water bottles and stuff? And I'm not aware of any research that has really, really dug into that. But yeah, it's one of those sneaky things where everybody started making all this like high tech, really, you know, it's cheaper to have synthetic fibers and comfy and durable and all of those things. And then they just forgot to tell us that it was made out of plastic and it was polluting our waterways when we washed them.
And based on some of the questions, I think, and Leah and I had talked about this previous, there are some of our researchers who are focused on doing work with nanomaterials and a variety of plastics and things. We wanted to start with this as kind of an overview and system of how some of it works. It kind of started off with Leah saying, you know, she was waiting for someone to ask why half of the plastic in Lake Michigan or in the Great Lakes is in Lake Michigan. And so we decided we'd talk kind of here, but if you guys continue to have lots of questions and stuff, make sure you get them to Leah, because we can have other people come and join so that you get some of these other great questions answered.
Yeah, if we want to do a deep dive on anything that the research coming out of the school, we can have the researchers themselves come. They have a lot of students who are doing a ton of great research. The students can come, and you know, that's a great opportunity for the students to present to the community. It's one of the things I loved about SFS was how much they focus on teaching people to communicate their science, because science is one of those things, right, where it's like super duper complicated to try and get your audience to understand what you're talking about sometimes. And so SFS really focuses on making sure that the students come out of their program with an understanding of a good way to communicate what they're doing. So it's good practice for the students. So yes, please send us your burning questions about the Great Lakes and freshwater research, and we'll do another presentation in the future. Fantastic. A couple more just really quick comments, and then I think that's the end of it. Microfibers are one good reason not to buy the clothes that's made from ocean plastic or from recycled bottles. Yeah, we think, hey, I'm doing this great thing. I'm buying a shirt made out of recycled plastic. It's great. We're reusing our plastic, but it's just putting it back into the system. It's so complicated to be a sustainable-minded person. Yeah, thank you for that comment, Stephen. And so, yeah, everything else in the chat that I'm seeing, Liz, is a lot of kudos and thanks and appreciation for your presentation.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. And like I said, I'm always happy. So feel free to reach out if you have more questions.
Yeah, let's do it again sometime. All right, I'm going to wrap it up and everyone can get on with your evening. Thank you so much for being here tonight, everybody. This was a lot of fun. I really liked our conversation, and yeah, hope you all stay warm and get out and enjoy the snow.